Then think about your work experience, your first time that you were in the experience of work. Was it a paper round? Was it a Saturday job while you were still at school? Was it that work experience that your school arranged for you? Or was it working in a bar while you were at university? Take your minds back. I know for many of us that won't be that far away, but take our minds back to think about that experience. And I want you to think about how happy you were in that experience. Were you asked questions about your views and perspectives? No. Or were you a hired pair of hands, given the pieces of work that everybody else didn't want to do? And we just give the younger person in our team all that work. I'd like to share with you 3 of my experiences. The first one was at a clothes shop. I was the age of 13. Now that would be classed as child labour, but it wasn't then. I was the age of 13, and the piece of advice I was given was, you should be seen but not heard. Your role is to watch what the customers are buying and then refill the racks with the clothes they've bought, so that all our new customers can see what's available. If I see any racks that are empty, I'll know you've done a bad job. But if I don't see you all day and I see those racks full, I know you've done a great job. My second job was in a shoe shop. 6 hours, stood on my feet, not able to have a bathroom break, not able to have a drink. And you were expected to stand there whether there were people in the shop or not, and you were expected to be there waiting for your customers. Again, wasn't interested in thoughts and perspectives, just be there, serve the customers, do your job. My dad called those 2 roles character building. I called them soul destroying. My third experience was the company that I then worked with for 16 years. So I left school at the age of 16, I went into banking, and I was part of an apprenticeship scheme. My days were filled with making sure that checks were filed into numerical order, and it usually ended up being 10 or 15,000 checks a day, ensuring they were in numerical order, and then hanging around waiting for the bank manager to decide to send the post at the very last minute of the day, and then realizing I had to sprint down the road like Usain Bolt to make sure that I hit the very last post. And if I didn't, well, that's another story. But my question to you is, when you had your first experiences, were you listened to? Were you asked questions about your thoughts about work, what you wanted, what worked, what didn't work for you? Or again, were you that hired hand? And I think this is a real challenge for us when we're focusing on creating more inclusive workplaces. Because not asking the questions of the younger generation that are working with us suggests that they don't have a voice and what they have to say is not important. When I speak to employers, their biggest issues around employment for the future either focus on the skills gap. We don't have the skills and the people to be able to fill the roles for the future. It might be the inclusion gap. We're unable to create a more inclusive workplace where people really thrive and give their best and feel that they can really contribute. And the third one is generally, we need to understand how we can engage with the schools far more effectively, and how we can get the younger generation, even down to the age of 7, to get excited about law, finance, insurance, transport. And for many of us in this room, we can't get excited about much of that. But the thing is, if we're not listening to that younger generation, how can we understand how we can get them excited about it? Deloitte did a piece of research in the US, and it showed that 30% of millennials had already left an organization for a more inclusive one. If you look at the demographics of our country, if we look at Manchester, Birmingham, over 50% of the under-16s are from Black or Asian minority ethnic groups. Now, I don't know about you, I wasn't brilliant at maths, but over 50% suggests it's not a minority group to me. It's moving towards majority. Yeah. And when we look at the Social Mobility Commission's data around qualifications, they've shown that it's going to take 120 years to bridge that gap between teenagers from deprived areas and the level of qualifications that people from more advantaged areas get. 120 years. And that's something that we don't often hear about. So if we're going to be organisations, if we're going to be employers, if we're going to be leaders that really want to bridge that divide, if we want to make sure we understand where the skills gaps are and where the skills opportunities are, if we want to create more inclusive workplaces, we have to listen to the younger generation. We have to listen to what they want, not only create them as hired hands. So I know we've heard a lot of interesting debates and conversations on the red spot, but I want to share an example of something that we've actually done to really help bridge that divide. And what I call it is the junior board. So I've got a number of employers that decided to take a little bit of a leap of faith. And what we did was we brought 15-year-olds from deprived areas in Leeds together for a 3-month period to talk to employers about what they really wanted. The first time we saw these 15-year-olds walk through the door, my first reaction was, oh my word, what have I done? I don't have children, so having 15-year-olds in a room with me was quite an interesting experience. That was character building. The key thing, though, as they were walking in really nervous, we brought a load of 20-year-olds from these organisations in so that they could actually talk to them and share perspectives and views of their organisations. Because I've now realised that I'm old enough to be their mother, maybe grandmother in some examples. So they spent time with these 20-year-olds, and over a 3-month period, we talked to them about how do you negotiate, how do you pitch, how do you do some analysis about these organisations, and how can you pull an argument together? Because we wanted these kids to feel really comfortable talking to the senior leaders within these companies. 3 months later, we brought the senior leaders together, and we said, these 15-year-olds are going to tell you how to run your business. And one of the senior leaders said to me, well, if they're going to tell me about the culture of my business, I hope it's not going to be anything boring like we need an ice cream machine on every floor. And I said, let's just take a leap of faith. I'm sure it's going to be far more impressive than that. So if we think about this 3-month journey that these kids had been on, they were walking into a room with senior leaders from big organisations, big global organisations to share their views and perspectives on their culture. And they were not walking in nervous, they were walking with a swagger. They were ready to share their views. And what was really insightful is they gave 4 perspectives to these senior leaders. The first one was, we want real job descriptions. The 2 sides of A4 you share with me about what the job should be does not excite me or entice me in any shape or form. What I'd love to see is a 3-minute video of the people actually doing the job, telling me what the day-to-day experience is like, what's great about this role, and what are the challenges. The second one was, I want to see accessible role models. Great if you've got a female chief executive, but I actually want to see the people that are 2 or 3 steps above me, so that I can see that there's people like me in the organisation, there's people I can aspire to, and there's people that I can speak to about how I progress my career. The third one was, I want a buddy or a mentor to help me navigate what's going on in this organisation. Moving from school to work is a daunting experience. You do that for the graduate population, why don't you do it for everybody else? And the final one was, I want an inclusive workplace. I want to feel, regardless how old I am, how much experience I've got, that I've got views and perspectives I can share. And they're going to be valued and they're going to be thought through. Well, the senior leaders stepped back and were mightily surprised, let me say, about the level of feedback they received from those 15-year-olds. And many of them went away and started implementing those over the summer. One of the 15-year-olds actually said to me, this is the first time somebody has ever listened to me. This is the first time I've ever been in a city that is literally 2 miles away from my house. And this is the first time I felt that the buildings in this city are accessible to me. This is changing my view. So for me, as employers and as organisations, we have to bridge that gap. And there's 3 things that we can do. Number 1, very simple, but hard to do. Open your ears and close your mouth. Because we actually need to listen to what other people have to say. The second one is, if we work in organisations where we truly believe inclusion is important, let's walk the talk. Let's stop talking about it, let's absolutely deliver it. And the third one is start a conversation. Because we never know about different perspectives, different views, and how we can deal with the challenges that our country faces around skills gaps and inequalities and other gaps without actually talking to people that are not necessarily involved in the issue, so that they can share their views and perspectives and we can get a different outcome. So open your ears, close your mouth. You might be surprised with the quality of the feedback you get. You might be impressed. Thank you.